Thanks for everyone coming to be with us tonight, taking some time out of your busy lives. My name is Jameis Gwilliam. I'm the Vice President of Development with Merlone Geyer Partners, the owner of the town center here. And with me on the stage are Glenn Goodman, who's Vice President of Design and Construction with Merlone Geyer, Joe Brogan in the middle with Foster Pepper, who's our Land Use Council, and Chris Snyder, who's a principal with Hewitt Landscape Architecture, based here in Seattle. And one thing we've learned since we bought the property in 2014 is how engaged this community is and the sense of ownership and pride that they have for the town center. And we've been engaged in the process that the city has been running for the past, really since 2017, the most current iteration of the visioning process and the sub-area planning process. And we've noticed as of late just an ongoing drumbeat of, all right, what's Merlone Geyer going to do? What do you guys want to do? If you were to redevelop, what would you do? And given some of the other, I guess where we are in that process with the city, we voluntarily wanted to hold this meeting. This is not part of the city's process that they're going through. This is our attempt to try and create more of a dialogue with the community. And we've just learned through experience that in this day and age, and everyone is so engaged and there's so much desire for transparency that we want to share with you what we're thinking, what our perspective is on the process that's going on with the city. If we were to redevelop the property, what would that look like? We have a few concept plans that we're going to share with you. And our goal is that will hopefully just lead to better dialogue. There's value in that. There's value in just having the back and forth communication. And unfortunately, it's challenging to have, I wish I could sit down with every one of you and have one-on-one conversation. My kids like to see me at night, and there's only so many hours in the day, right? So we have to do events like this. My hope is just that we can, you can come with an open mind, and I know there's a tendency to think of the owners of real estate as, big bad developers that just want to ruin your city. That's not at all what we're here for. We have realities of just the ownership that we have, the leases that we have here at our property center or at our shopping center that we need to respect, and we need to make sure those businesses remain viable. And that's our goal first and foremost. But the reality is there's a lot of change that's occurring, right? Change is it's inevitable. It's going to happen. And so today what we wanted to talk about were just those changes that occur over time. We're going to take a little trip down memory lane thanks to some great photos that Don Kraft provided us with. And then we're going to share some concepts for the future. And we're going to share some placemaking, some key attributes of great placemaking that Chris Snyder in particular and his firm who do a phenomenal job here in the region working on. He's going to share some of those thoughts. And then we're going to have some time to answer questions. And we hope that we can answer most of the questions that you have. Hopefully, we know we won't be able to answer all of them, and we know that after this there will be more questions that you will have, and we plan on posting more information, including this presentation, on our website, lfptowncenter.com, and it's set up like a blog, so it really is a forum for us to try and provide real-time updates on what we're thinking. So we've learned some things about change. As an owner of real estate, and retail real estate in particular, we own about 16 million square feet on the West Coast, from Bellingham all the way to the border with Mexico. And we've seen quite the transformation recently with retail. We've all read about it in the headlines, right? And one of the things that we've learned, and I'm gonna turn through these black and white images. I wish I knew all the details of what was going on at this point in time in the 60s when they were designing and building the town center, but it's underpinning to this conversation about changes just that happen. And so as with our experience in retail, we see retailers who do a great job adapting to change, right? We see Target, for example, is a phenomenal retailer who they've learned how to create an omni-channel presence, and by doing so, they've remained viable. On the other side, we see a company like Sears, who really, Sears should be the Amazon that we have today. At one point in time, they were the Amazon, and because they were unable to adapt to change, they became an obsolete retailer, right? That now are trying to figure out how to make it. And there's ways, whenever there's change, there's ways to respond to change in a way that's positive, and then there's ways to, and sometimes you have to really push back, but what we all know is that change is going to happen. It's just inevitable. And the tools that we have to deal with change and the way that we can try and address it really determines how we can move forward. For example, climate change, this community has done a phenomenal job of looking at how to be a part of the solution to addressing climate change, right? And there's been a lot of thought and process that's gone into that. You look at the growth that's occurring in the region, and the voters stepping up and basically saying, look, we're going to approve ST3, and there's going to be an expansion of public transit. That's a way that the community has, in a situation that many people differ on opinion of how to address the issue of growth in public transit, that's a way that change is being addressed, right? And the reality is that we as property owners, like all of you, we have to maintain our property rights and make sure that we have the tools available to us to respond to that change. And you as a community, going back even to 2004, recognized that there were changes that were going to happen. And there was a lot of effort that went into the creation of, in 2004, 2005, the Town Center Design Guidelines. In fact, by show of hands, how many of you were involved in that process in 2004, 2005? All right, round of applause for you guys. I've read that document many times, and there are a lot of very sound principles. Unfortunately, what happened in 2007, 2008, 2009, it kind of made it difficult to carry out any of these those goals that were laid out, right? Just with the recession. We acquired the property in 2014, around the time when, as you can see here in the middle, that's from the comprehensive plan update. And that was another document that addressed and looked at focusing the introduction of more of a transit-oriented type of development and trying to incentivize that type of a development here at the town center. It was part of your comprehensive plan. It was adopted. Then last year, there was more outreach that occurred related to the town center and trying to gather input. And the city has done that, from our perspective, based on the fact that sound transit was coming. And with good intentions, the city staff, city council, planning commission have tried to figure out a way to be prepared to address those changes as they happen. That's not an easy thing to do, especially in a community such as yours where there's not a lot of commercial property. You guys don't deal with a lot of commercial development. It's primarily single-family homes in a beautiful rural setting, right? And so the paradigm of now looking at the prospect of transit and how you as a community maintain your character while dealing with that transit is not something that's easily dealt with, right? And we recognize that. We fully recognize that. Every property that we own or that we consider redevelopment for has its own story. The projects that I'm working on in Linwood and Shoreline are very different from anything that could happen here. There's a different set of market fundamentals. There's a different desire that was already established. Those properties already, they went through planned action ordinances years ago to increase density. They wanted to see density. They wanted to see change happen. There's been these planning efforts related to the town center, but what has not occurred was that sub-area planning process to move it forward as far as the city wanted to. And so these are some recent milestones of what's been occurring here. In 2017, Sound Transit announced their construction of the parking garage here at Town Center. I believe actually it might have been a little bit before that when it went out to the vote, but at least in 2017, that's when we started getting really involved. The city began the process of creating this sub-area plan around the town center, and we began meeting with the mayor, city council, and members of the community to understand what the concerns were, what the thought process was behind this. In 2018, we attended numerous planning meetings that were going on, and in response to the efforts that the city was going through, we provided comment letters. We've provided numerous comment letters on just observations that we've had that could advance what we saw as some of the goals that were trying to be achieved. And the city held community meetings that we participated in. And now in 2019, the city released a DEIS, draft environmental impact statement that we provided comments on. And there also were studying code amendments and design guidelines for the town center, all of which we also commented on. And we also held a drop-in session so that I could have more of that one-on-one time. I think about 50 of you came. Hopefully some of you that are here, if you're here, appreciate you spending that time with me, and hopefully my voice lasts a little longer than it did that night. But that was really helpful to understand and to be able to share our thoughts. And then we were at the committee of the whole meeting where we were able to field questions from council as they're trying to grapple with these issues. And so we wanted to lay out what a potential process would look like for us if we were to move forward. And part of the reason for having this meeting was to really gauge, where the community's at. I'm not suggesting that what we are proposing is what everyone wants to see happen, but we believe it is in line with the planning processes that were outlined in 2004, 2005, as well as the comprehensive plan, and even in the vision document dating back to 2018. And so the first step is we would submit conceptual plans described in detail in a short plat application to the city, and we may adopt the final EIS as part of the environmental review associated with any project. Our proposal would address the possibility that Sound Transit may construct a parking garage on a portion of our property. We haven't seen definitive plans about that yet, but we would study that and it'd be part of our proposal. The current chapter 18.42 of the city's code outlines the process for what's called a development agreement. What a development agreement is, it's a contract binding the property, the city with the property owner, on how an orderly redevelopment of that property could occur over multiple phases as in response to changes that happen. The development agreement would have to be approved by the city council. That means that it would be subject to any city council process. So public hearings and an engagement process so that the community could weigh in on the design of that development agreement. That's where I state here, public input on the development agreement would occur. And then the development agreement would likely address elements of the vision, applicable city code and design guideline standards, and alternative designs and design departures. The development agreement would allow for redevelopment in phases and flexibility to adapt to changes in the market. I always use the analogy, you think 10 years ago, I think iPhones had just been invented. You think how much changes in 10 years. It's for us to try and plan exactly what we're going to do when all of the leases here at the town center expire and there's an opportunity to redevelop. It's even beyond 10 years from now, but just looking out 10 years as an example, it's very difficult for any one of us to identify exactly what that project would look like. We can, however, study a range of housing densities and commercial retail square footages and the impacts associated with those and document that in the development agreement. And happy to answer more questions on that as we get into it. The development agreement would not focus on specific building designs. That would occur on a phase-by-phase basis where each building design would have to be approved through that design process. but it could address some aspects of building aesthetics. And all existing tenants, their leases would remain in full force and effect as it relates to the development agreement. And changes to leases or business operations related to sound transit impacts are to be dealt with through that process with sound transit that will come at another time. That's not something that we're responsible for, but that we're going to have to work together with our existing businesses, with the city, with the community, and try to figure out how we deal with the introduction of transit coming here to the site. And we anticipate that our plans would fall within the scope of the existing comprehensive plan policies and the sub-area plan for the town center. And land use and building permit applications would follow in subsequent phases. So with that in mind, I wanted to invite up Glenn Goodman, who's, as I mentioned, our Vice President of Design and Construction. And Glenn has been with Merlone Geyer for much longer than I have, more than 20 years, more than 25 years, I think, almost. He's seen a lot in retail. He's worked on a lot of mixed-use redevelopment, as I have, but here in the Pacific Northwest, he works on our portfolio of about 36 shopping centers, anything from TIs that are going on for the tenants that are moving in all the way to these redevelopment projects. And so I've asked him to share with all of you some of these concepts that we've come up with.
Thank you, James. Good evening, and thank you for coming tonight. As James discussed, when Merlone Geyer learned of Sound Transit's desire to locate a 300-car commuter parking garage on this site, we began to think about what kind of impacts that would bring to the site and what opportunities, likewise, it might bring. So I'd like to take a little bit here to discuss our vision of maybe what could happen, and you'll see there's a lot of variations. So the aerial plan that you see in front of you is the current town center. The red line is Merlone Geyer's current ownership. At the three corners, on the south side we have Starbucks and we have the gas station. On the east side we have City Hall, and the north end we have the Windermere Real Estate. Obviously we have Ballinger to the northeast road and Bothaway to the south. Lime Creek is on the west, comes along the frontage and goes out to the lake. This site is approximately just shy of 17 acres. It contains about 225,000 square feet of retail. One of the things that's worth noting on this site is the grades. As many of you have come here regularly, the side of this building in particular, you notice where there's actually 16 feet of grade right there. That's over 20 feet from the upper corner to the lower corner. So when we looked at the site, we felt that it had three distinct zones, zones A, B, and C. Zone A is the current location of the two-story medical office building parcel. Zone B is the upper level retail that we look up right behind us, and Zone C is the bottom level. Each of these zones has the ability to stand alone and could potentially be redeveloped independently. Should we be able to redevelop the site or a portion of the site, our design team would need to take a deeper dive into the site planning, architectural character, and placemaking. And Chris will talk more about the placemaking here when I'm finished. In addition, these designs would all need, as James mentioned, would be subject to terms potentially have agreed to in a development agreement or as currently prescribed in city ordinance. So on the screen right now is one of many conceptual plans that we've drawn up over the last, year or so. The plan includes a new main street beginning at the signaled intersection on Ballinger, kind of arcing down through the property and exiting out to Bothell Way. Along that main street, you'll have retail shops, restaurants, a relocated new home for the commons in that zone, and a grocery store facing Bothell Way on the lower end where the surface parking is, as well as proposed residential uses in zones A, B, and C. Without knowing exactly what will transpire with Sound Transit, we wanted to demonstrate a variety of options for the redevelopment of this site. Sitting adjacent to City Hall, this plan will show a 4-level residential building containing roughly 140 units, over 2 levels of parking, and 8,100 square feet of retail. You can see the retail in the yellow on the left side with the parking behind it. We will also, with this plan, we can also maintain ingress and egress to the police substation, the rear of City Hall, and access on the north and south sides to City Hall. This building would be approximately 66 feet tall, which is about what code allows today. The building would also take advantage of the existing grades that I was referring to earlier. So with that 16 feet, this building could be tucked back into the slope, essentially hiding the garage on the upper end. And then we would use the retail building in the front, to screen the rest of the parking garage from view from Bothell Way. So another alternative for the same site could be the location of the Sound Transit parking garage. This plan currently shows 300 stalls dedicated to Sound Transit and another roughly 200 stalls which are to replace the stalls that the surface parking lot stalls that Sound Transit would be removing from the construction in front and behind. Likewise, this building would also fit within that same 66-foot height envelope. And it's also worth noting that the design of the parking structure and architectural treatments and landscaping screening would still be subject to Sound Transit and city processes. Okay, now moving over to Zone B, which is a reminder is this upper level parking lot behind you all. The current plan is showing 2 multifamily buildings of approximately 280 units each. The east building on the right assumes about a 20-foot setback along Ballinger Way, which would preserve the majority of the mature trees along the frontage there, if not all of them. The building would also include roughly about 7,000 square feet of retail near the entrance of the signal there at Ballinger. It would be the conclusion of essentially the main street. To the west, we would have this E-shaped building, and we'll talk about that here in a second, about the siding of that building and the design of the massing of that building. So, as we discussed, this project could go is in phases, and these buildings could be constructed in multiple phases, while maintaining existing access to Ballinger in the north-south direction. As a reminder, and this is incredibly important, any development on this site or anywhere on this site right now is subject to existing leases with tenants, some of which we anticipate being impacted by the Sound Transit's work. Okay, so what you're looking at right now is really difficult to see, I think. It's getting washed out here. But that E-shaped residential building I said we'd talk about later, that's closer to the property line. So as you can see from this exhibit, this is basically a slice through one of those buildings, specifically through the building and the courtyard, looking across the property line to the single-family homes in the Brookside Triangle. So as you can see from the screen, or hopefully, the current zoning allows for a minimum of 20 feet of setback from the property line to build the buildings. So that's represented by this red line. Okay, after James had several meetings with the Brookside Triangle residents, and we had some takeaways there. And what we learned their concerns that they don't want a big building looming over the top of them, and what can we do to mitigate that? So, when designing this, we decided to put this E-shaped building with the mass of the building facing internal streets, creating a nice corridor internally to the site. We have some extensions, some residential extensions, but there are large courtyards, raised courtyards planted overlooking the single-family homes and the creek. And you can see that. So it really reduces the impact on those homes. Okay, we're going to move to Zone C here, which is the lower level. So basically, what you're looking at is the existing site plan. So if this area were to be redeveloped, there's numerous versions of plans with varying densities, intensities, and uses that could be implemented here. I'm going to just show you a few of them, just give you an idea of what could happen. So this is revisiting the scheme that we previously looked at initially on the overall map. And this scheme is, again, it's a Main Street scheme. It's, again, starting back at Ballinger, coming back around down to Bothell Way. It would result in roughly 80,000 square feet of ground floor retail, including a grocery store. That's the big tannish color box facing Bothell Way with a parking lot. And a new home for the Commons, which is directly across the street from that grocery store. Again, same color. And in addition to roughly 400 residential units, over the top is structured parking. In addition, with this configuration, there may be opportunity to remove the fence that divides the site from Lion Creek in this area. And through the design of these residential units on the backside, we've thought about it might be a nice idea to locate townhomes with stoops out facing the creek and potentially make that a walking pedestrian street, landscaped, and a kind of an amenity strip up the north and south direction of the west side of the property. What you're looking at right now is the upper four levels of residential and the courtyard for what we're proposing. Similar to our prior slide that looked like this, this shows the 20-foot setback from the property line within this area, what would be required, and what we're proposing for setback, which is roughly 75 feet. So there's another concept, another mixed-use concept, and what this does is this creates this main vehicular access way connecting the traffic signal at Ballinger to the traffic signal down on Bothell Way next to the Starbucks. It creates this nice strong access through the property, nice circulation point. Very similar to the last scheme, the idea would be to have retail, it's about similar densities, similar size. We'd have a new home for the Commons. We'd have a bigger community area, green space, just to the kind of north end of this. That's a triangular piece. But it gives you an idea of what other layouts could happen here. Again, this is the upper levels of those same buildings. You can see where the residential would fall and then the landscaped courtyards on the podiums. The third scheme we want to show is very similar to what's here today. In fact, as you can pretty much tell, along the west side, the lower bar there is the existing footprint. So if that were to remain in place, the thought would be, well, maybe some tenants stay, maybe some get replaced. We'd probably do a facade remodel to bring it up to date, more in tune with what might happen on this site. Then on the sort of two-story section that we are sitting in here right now, we'd have to do a rebuild. There's some additional retail parking and creating some new outdoor spaces and new retail opportunities. So going up to the level that we're currently at, so the thought for the center where we have rebuilt is that we potentially relocate the commons from where we are today potentially to another space down towards the end here. That would give us opportunity to actually remodel this to actually create a rooftop plaza with additional retail, which would be an awesome amenity to the community, to the residential units here, and provide great views out to the lake. So it's, again, another version of what could be. And I think with that, we're going to invite Chris Snyder back up here and to discuss about placemaking and give us some kind of information on his firm and other things that he's done in town. Yeah, cool stuff. He's the guy who makes it fun. Thanks, Chris.
Good evening. My name is Chris Snyder. I'm a principal of design at Hewitt. We're an architecture and landscape architecture firm, and I've had the pleasure of, for the last 30 years, of working on projects such as this, where we're trying to take projects that are auto-oriented and turn them into people place. So what I want to talk with you a little bit about here, even though we're not specifically designing any of the places yet on the future project, I wanted to talk to you about the key attributes, those things that we as a landscape architecture firm think about when we're trying to create place for people. And when we started working on University Village in the early 2000s, and the two words that the owner at that time said to me were linger longer. He said, I don't care what you do, but do the things that make people want to come here, stay here, hang out, and make this place feel comfortable to them. So for the last 20 years or so, that's been our library, or our laboratory of trying to study those things. We've been able to do that now in other places around the Sound. In fact, we just finished the Kenmore Town Green up the road. And we really think that the 5 attributes of placemaking that we're going to talk about are those that are always the 5 elements that are sitting on our shoulder as we start to think about how to create people place. So here's the five elements: accessibility, activation, accommodation, anticipation, and authenticity. They all start with A because that's the way I can remember them a little bit easier, but they all are important. So let's start with accessibility. Obviously, you want to be able to, whether you're arriving by car, bike, or as a pedestrian, you want to feel like you can discover the place, get to it, pass through it, exit it, discover it in all ways that feel safe and inviting and interesting. So to allow those opportunities to happen, to be able to say this place is accessible, it really means it wants to be very porous. And porous means that you can attack it, you can enter it, leave it, explore it from all kinds of directions. That way, you kind of always have a way to get out if you feel unsafe, or you also have a lot of different ways to come to it from different experiences, different times you arrive. So the permeability and the porosity of the place gives you the opportunity to experience the project in a different way when you come to visit over many times. And you can see some of these ideas of pedestrian connection, nice street sections which allow cars and pedestrians to habitate together, sidewalks that allow carriages and walkers and people seating. These type of spaces, which we could very much envision here, where cars and pedestrians kind of share a similar plane, and really in a way the pedestrians sort of dominate the space. So all of those things are important. So if we go on to activation, once you've arrived and you've found your way to the place, what's going to catch your eye? What's going to be those elements that sort of make you want to hang out? So this is Redmond Town Center. That was one of our early projects. And the idea was let's create this incredible central fountain that's sort of like a place where everybody wants to come to as an attractor. So having some singular or even smaller interesting attractors are important to activate the place. It's also important that the vertical face of the building and the horizontal place of the open space can interact. So opening up walls so that dining can happen inside and outside is very important to activate the edge of the space. Have to have great retail. We've designed a lot of open spaces, and by far the best ones are when the edge users like this place can spill out and connect to the open space and really kind of enliven both of those, both the inside and out. And then, of course, have to have those events. Programming is a huge part of any of these successful developments, and you sort of have to steward the activity in the place. Just like here in the Commons, events happen and it sort of feels different a lot of times when you arrive here, and that's really important. You can sort of look forward to coming to the Commons because you're going to meet friends, you're going to meet new people, you're going to have other things to do. So we want to make sure when we plan the outdoor space that we have the capability to allow that to happen. The accommodation part is really, really, really important. It's like once you get to the space, we want you to feel like, hey, they designed this space for me. There's a seat over there that's in the shade that really has my name on it. Or, hey, I want to sit in the sun, and I have that opportunity. So it's really about how the place makes you feel, makes you comfortable, makes you want to linger longer there because you feel like, hey, I can find a spot no matter if it's a rainy day, sunny day, windy day. So that bit of accommodation really shows that the designers, the owner really cares about the patron, and those are the things that we think this idea of accommodation really makes people want to fall in love with the place. So need landscaping, landscape architect, we're going to have landscaping, right? And it's really important that nature is brought into the project, especially in the place you live. It's beautiful. Right now, this area, this town center, feels a little hard, right? I mean, there's an opportunity here to infuse the overall feeling of the community into the experience of the town center. So we, on all of our projects, are always pushing to try to find ways to involve landscape into the kind of DNA of the project. This is a little hard to see, but the other part of accommodation is finding the right scale of the space. A lot of people say, oh, we need tons of open space. Oh, open space. And that's not really the right solution all the time. We'd rather design great open space that is high value than just have lots of it, which is high volume. So we want to find that balance of having enough open space, but creating those edges to it that make it feel right and make it feel like it's got human scale. Seating is really important, lots of varieties of it. Lighting at night so it feels safe. Wish we had more light on that photo right there. Small little areas, sometimes you want a big place where you can hang out. Sometimes you want a little space you can go off in the corner. So the variety of scales of space, really important. And then of course, want to have places for all of our ages. So great to see a lot of people out here with the same color hair that I have. But we do have to think about the young'uns too. In fact, having kids come to a place with their mothers is one of the primary successful, you can really tell if a place is wonderful when the kids and the moms hang out and it becomes a destination. We have 4 or 5 water features at U Village where the moms bring towels and bathing suits because their kids play in them so often they have to basically towel them off and bring them home, so they just plan for that now. Then anticipation is that thing where, boy, I want to go back there because I hear this such and such is going to happen, or I remember this one place and I want to go back and see it. So it's about creating layers of experience. So it's not a one-trick pony. You don't just show up, figure it all out at once, and then you leave, and to come back, oh, it's the same thing again. No, there needs to be layers of experience, and that means not just creating adding things like art and impromptu, informal kind of surprise things that show up. But also, this is at the Kenmore project, and yeah, that's a water feature, but in the winter, that rock in the middle is really not a rock. It was made out of concrete, and it's heated. So if you're walking around there and all of a sudden it's chilly and you sit on it, you're going to go, whoa, this is warm, this is cool. Sorry, this is warm and pretty cool. So it's that kind of little delight that you get, and really makes you want to, well, boy, if they did that, what's going to happen the next time I show up? So again, having events that people can be, having things show up. Food trucks are a big deal, and the ability to bring those in. So we have to plan for those things. And then all the way down to the littlest detail. This is, none of you are skateboarders here, I don't imagine, but there are a lot of skateboarders out there. So we have to armor a lot of our work with skate blocks. And they tend to happen every 5 or 6 feet along a wall. Well, at U Village, we said, well, about every 5th one of those, we turned into a little frog, because the place used to be a marsh. I don't know if you knew that, but U Village used to be kind of part of the lake. So it floats on this marsh, and we wanted to kind of give a little bit of history. It's the belly height of a kid, and it just, again, even though they're 3 or 5 years old, they're going to remember that. And then the last one is authenticity. I touched on it a little bit. But none of the previous ones matter if it feels fake, if it feels like Disney World's landed here. And yeah, it's exciting for a while, but it doesn't mean anything to my community. It's not of my community. So the cool part about your community is you have this great setting. And I hinted at the landscape. So we want to, while we're designing this, and with your input, is to try to find what are those things that really mean a lot to you that want to get expressed in the open space. And I read a lot of that in your vision statement. It's all kind of there. So as we move forward, but it's so important that you feel like this place is your place. It's not just any other place. So on a couple of projects, this one here is Thornton Place. I don't know if you've been to a movie there. There's a little piazza next door. Well, it used to be an old cranberry bog. So I'm doing a lot of bog work lately. I didn't know that until I said that. But so we made a fountain that looked like cranberries, and then we did a paving pattern that had the kind of mixing and the kind of confusion of a mesh of cranberries in it. So just a subtle gesture, maybe nobody will ever pick it up, but I think the people that live there are kind of proud that it sort of talks to the history of the place, and that's what we want to find. And then the last thing I'll talk about is stormwater. Clearly a huge issue nowadays, and we don't see that as a problem. We see that as an opportunity. Most of our projects, I'd say 60% of our projects are in Seattle. They have a huge stormwater requirements. So we've learned now to make that an opportunity to show off the stormwater and to try to make it part of the educational process of living in the Northwest. So, and that will actually, I think, probably be the most important thing, because you're so lake connected. You have this beautiful landscape that you live in, and the water has to find its way to the lake. What a story we could tell about that. So we're looking forward to moving on with the process and doing some great things here. Thank you for your time, and now I'll turn it back to Jameis.